Hey, I'm Alex from Board Game Co., and today I am going over my top 10 Kickstarters from 2020. These are the Kickstarter games that in some way, some form, I am most excited about. I ordered the list based on just what felt right, but a variety of factors do go into it, from how exciting the campaign was, how anticipating of the game I am, where it fits in my collection, how much I cared if I never got it. All these things kind of come together to ultimately what is a very subjective, very based on my own opinion, non-fact based list and ordering of my top 10 Kickstarters of 2020. And in true Board Game Co. fashion, rest assured, I have way over 10 in here, and I will explain how I got over 10. And to begin with, the one where I'm just straight up cheating and not even pretending to care about any rules is going to be my number 11, which is For Humours. For Humours is an interesting one because in a variety of ways, I don't know if I care as much about this game as anything else on this list, or I should say I know I don't, and yet I kept ordering my list and taking games off, taking various Kickstarters off the list, and then I kept realizing I kept refusing to take For Humours off, even as I kept bumping it down to the bottom. Something about this game is so whimsical and appealing, and the fact that I can play this game in a half-hour range means it will see play more than a lot of other games that are in this list. A lot of other games. This will see a lot more play. This is by Adam's Apple Games. This was recently on Kickstarter. Came in fairly small, coming in with 1,200 backers and $40,000 raised, and ultimately it's a bit of a prisoner's dilemma, bluffing, lying to your friends, deduction, all wrapped into one small little package. This is a game where you have to kind of figure out what you're going to be doing is you're trying to get onto this board over here. What you have to do is you have these cards you're putting your tokens onto, and your tokens go face down, so nobody knows exactly what you placed. And each of the characters has a configuration of which tokens can go on the character, and the way those interplay leads to how the cards will resolve, and therefore how you get your tokens onto the board. So, for instance, the most common idea, just to give you one instance, is whenever you see this yellow over here, that's going to result, that's choleric, and that's going to result if a single choleric is on the card, then they win the card. Basically, you want to be one or none, because if there's more than one, then they all die and you go to the next order of operations. And you're going to continue that. And so as people put down tokens face down, you start wondering, well, were they putting down this token or that token? Maybe you ask them the question, hey Rob, what did you do? And it's so interesting and appealing and whimsical, and the art really works. It is a solid game that, like I said, I kept bumping it down on my list, but I refused to take it off. And that's why it's my number 11. And from there we have my number 10. And my number 10 has a lot of games on it. And the way I did this is a similar idea where for number 10, what I did is I took games and I put them all in one category, all comprising 10. There's like 6 or 7 of them. And they are all games that in some way I am less excited about, because I already have them in some form. I have a different iteration. You'll see as I go through them all. But to begin with, we have Machina Arcana, which I have the second edition of the game. And so I'm somewhat less excited for the Kickstarter because of the fact that I have the game on my shelf, and I can play it whenever I want, and waiting for the Kickstarter is not a blocker to that. And so to some small degree, I am less excited about this game compared to other games, and yet if I didn't have the game, rest assured this would be significantly higher on the list, and that's true for all of my number 10s. And Machina Arcana to me is a dungeon crawler that falls into a weird space of being one of my favorite dungeon crawlers in terms of accessibility and ease of getting to the table, yet not actually my favorite dungeon crawler. There are many experiences I would prefer to Machina Arcana, and yet Machina Arcana teaches fairly quickly, all things considered. Lots of edge cases to be considered, to be aware of, or whatnot, but if you are playing with other people, you can get them up and running in literally a few minutes. The game is a lot of strategy and depth and tactical positioning. This is a game where you will frequently have to run from your enemies, and you'll frequently have to dodge and avoid and figure out how to set up the map situation before doing something, whatever that something might be, whether it's a weapon you found, whether it's activating traps, whether it's exploding a barrel, and then suddenly you have a little bit of reprieve until the next tile as you slowly go through the side-scrolling dungeon, because as you move over additional tiles, eventually parts of the dungeon drop off, and this lends itself both to a tactical positioning of the game as well as to making it, manageable and controllable on your board. Combine that with a whole bunch of steampunk universe, steampunk weapons and upgrades, and the upgrades in the game, as usual, if you've met me, are one of my favorite parts of this genre, and they have a lot of this equipment that you can slowly but surely get as you go through chests, hoping down the monster breathing down your neck is not actually going to take a bite out of you while you wait. but if you get enough upgrades and equipment, you can position yourself to be well equipped to deal with the slowly upgrading monsters as well as the end game state of the game. The game can drag out a bit longer than I would like, but they do have mechanics to play shorter scenarios to not go through all of it, and honestly it's a game that I would say I don't generally feel the need to finish it to enjoy it. I try to finish it, and usually I have, but I certainly don't need to finish it in order to get the enjoyment out of the game, in order to get what I'm looking for out of this experience. Machina Arcana is a game that I highly recommend, and this is a good point to realize that I probably should mention that some of these will have late pledges. So for Humours, for instance, will have a late pledge notification available. Machina Arcana has a pre-order, which I'm assuming is a late pledge. I haven't actually looked into it yet, but as I go through these, I will try to point out what may or may not have a late pledge if you want it. I do have a review of For Humours, and I do have a review as well as a Should You Back It on Machina Arcana. Which will bring us to next up, which is Vindication. This is another game that falls into the category of I kind of already have it. This is going to be Vindication Chronicles. It's actually active on Kickstarter now as you're watching this, I believe. I think so, yes. And so you can still actually back this game, and technically, by the way, it's a good time to call out that 2020 is not over yet. And so if in the next 5 to 7 days a new Kickstarter launches that I was not aware was coming and manages to magnify any of these and how excited I am by it, well, so be it. You miss out on this list. But Vindication Board Game Chronicles, Vindication and the Chronicles expansion is going to be the Chronicles expansion to Vindication. Vindication is a game I love. It's a game that every time I pull it out, I feel immensely satisfied by the puzzle that I am dealing with and how to win that puzzle. It is a game that I try to get it to the table as often as I can, and that playtime makes it accessible. We have played this game in as little as 45 minutes, although I would say the norm is more an hour and a half, but nonetheless, an hour and a half for the experience it gives is, well, frankly, incredible. And I already have the Leaders and Alliances expansions, and yet I have not been compelled to pull that out to add to the game. Honestly, Vindication, the board game, the base game alone, gives me enough of an experience that I don't feel the need for additional content. And yet, I'm excited for what Chronicles adds to the table, because Chronicles adds the idea of story and narrative to this game. And while story and narrative are not things I specifically seek out in board games, if they are incorporated correctly, they can certainly add to my experience. And so I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what Chronicles does, whether there's additional journeys, whether there's additional story points, whether there's additional decisions that are happening to the world around you, or the actions and choices you make as you go through each card that you're now unlocking. I'm intrigued to see how Chronicles ends up, whether it improves my Vindication experience or whether it turns a 90-minute game into a 2-hour game, and perhaps I just don't care for what that extra half hour brings. I don't know how it plays out, but I am certainly intrigued. The sheer amount of cards, they've shown pictures of how many cards you get in Vindication and how many cards you get in Chronicles. The sheer amount of content this game is potentially giving you and adding to your experience, well, like I said already, I am intrigued and I am looking forward to it, and that is why it shares my number 10 spot with a lot of others. Moving on from there, we have Guards of Atlantis tabletop MOBA. This is another one where I have the base game. Technically, I had the base game because I just recently got rid of it, but I had the base game, and Guards of Atlantis is one of my favorite MOBA games. While not perhaps the most accessible, it is one that I found the balance and leveling up of your character so intriguing. This is a MOBA. It's going to be one of those games where you have your core heroes, and then additionally you have your, oh, by the way, Vindication, going back to that, sorry. Vindication is active to back. I have a Should You Back It and a review of the base game, so if you want to check those out. For Guards of Atlantis, I do not have a full review. I do have a Play This Not That with Rum and Bones. Rum and Bones did win in theory, but both of these are games that I really thoroughly enjoy. I believe I have a Should You Back It on the game as well if you want to check that out, but Guards of Atlantis, like I said, is one that it is a tabletop MOBA. You are going to have your heroes and your minions that are taking control of the board as you advance on these different lanes. As you slowly but surely clear the waves of minions from an area, you will progress to the next area, pushing your opponent's lane into the next battle zone as you fight back and forth. Guards of Atlantis, when I had it, was an incredible game that I thoroughly enjoyed, and yet had some small balance issues, some small finicky stuff in the way the game played out that did not detract from how much I liked the game, but certainly are things that could have made the game better. And so I was intrigued and excited when they announced Guards of Atlantis 2, when they brought it to Kickstarter, and they sat there and said, here's all the content you want, here's some extra heroes, here's some new heroes, here's some more balanced stuff, here's some gameplay changes that make the game more accessible and easier to play, and don't drag out forever, and have those small tweaks and things that we've learned along the way. And here you go, wrapped into a brand new package with better miniatures, better art, better everything. I don't actually know if there was better art. I don't recall if the art was the same. And so, I'm excited for Guards of Atlantis. I'm excited for like I said, this was a game that also played in the 90 minute to 2 hour range and was so enjoyable every single time you played it. It was so enjoyable every single time you leveled up your heroes. You see, when you level up your heroes, this is a mechanic that I really enjoy. When you level up your heroes, let me see if I can find any images here. But when you level up your heroes, you're choosing effectively between two cards. And so what you have is you have a card, and you can take the ability on one or the stat upgrade on the other. And so over here, we go. Guards of Atlantis, why I'm back in it. So you have these different cards that you're choosing for your upgrades, and one will be your stat and one will be your ability. And so no matter what you do, there's a choice that you kind of want both, but you might want this way, and it pushes you in different directions as you develop the growth of your character in this game. I really enjoy the system Guards of Atlantis brings to the table. I enjoy the upgrading it brings to the table. I enjoy the tactical board positioning that Guards of Atlantis brings to the table. It is a game that could very easily rise to my top 50 if I play it more or whatnot. It is thoroughly enjoyable, one that I recommend, and one that I am very much excited about. From there we move on to Kemet, Blood and Sand. Kemet, Blood and Sand is going to be again, this is number 10. This is number 10 again, because Kemet is a game that I already own, and I don't need Blood and Sand. And honestly, for all I know, Blood and Sand will make the experience worse. I just don't know yet. And so I'm simultaneously excited about a relaunch with new stuff, new content for one of my favorite games of all time, and also completely prepared for the fact that my base game might be better. My current version of Kemet may well have better art. Some of the art choices in Kemet Blood and Sand did not appeal to me as much as the original Kemet. Something about the original Kemet stood out to me more. Some of the graphic design stood out to me more. Some of the whole drama they had with the Cthulhu thing in this game stood out to me. Like, there's a whole bunch of choices, and I'm realizing as I speak that I forgot about Dead Reckoning as well. Dead Reckoning, I'm going to have to add I'm going to shoehorn another game into this list. You see, Dead Reckoning isn't in my list of backed I'll explain when I get to Dead Reckoning. We'll go to that. But in any case, going back to Kemet. So Kemet Blood and Sand is one of my favorite games of all time, and they have a new version, and that might make it better, that might make it worse, it might be the same, and so that's why it's stuck at number 10. They have a lot of new content for this game. They have some deluxeified extras. They have these nice little pyramids with cap tops. They have new art, new powers, new stuff in the game. And yet that doesn't mean it's better. Contrasted with Guards of Atlantis, where Guards of Atlantis, I saw how all the improvements and changes they made were critiques I had of the game. For Kemet, I have no critiques. The biggest critique it somehow has, or kind of has, is an aspect of a lack of clarity amongst the rules about how there's so many different questions and FAQs to deal with all the interplay of the things. And yet for us, for our group, we just never really had an issue for it. And so to me, Kemet Blood and Sand is fixing a problem I never had, and that makes me a little bit more wary, but nonetheless very excited, especially these tile displays. I'm excited about the tile displays. I'm excited about the sandworm, the sacred bull, the obelisks, everything in this game. I mean, it's Kemet. At the end of the day, this is Kemet, and I can't not be excited about more content for my game of Kemet. As far as late pledging this one, it does not look like there's a late pledge currently available. I definitely did a full should you back it on that. I have not done a review of Kemet. I should do a review of Kemet. Perhaps we'll see. Maybe that will come soon. Moving on from there, we have Terraforming Mars Big Box, again in the number 10 spot, because again, there's only so excited I can be for a game that I have played 3-4 times in the past month alone, and that's because Terraforming Mars is one of my favorite games of all time. And yet not having the big box doesn't stop me from playing it. They do have some sort of pre-order here. I don't know if it's a late pledge or not. You can check that out. But Terraforming Mars Big Box is going to give you, well, anything you wanted. If you wanted the base game, you can get that. If you wanted all the expansions, you can get that. If you wanted the deluxeification of the big box and 3D tiles of the game, which I certainly wanted, well then, I got my hands on that. This is going to be something that potentially adds to my experience, and I say potentially because there is every possibility that having a gigantic box full of deluxeified extras makes it less likely that I get Terraforming Mars to the table. That is certainly a possibility. It's certainly something I have considered. But it also potentially adds to the experience on my table. I mean, this what you see on the screen here is so much more visually delightful than what Terraforming Mars is currently offering, because Terraforming Mars, while one of my favorite games of all time, certainly is deserving of every single critique that they ever got about the lackluster components, the stock clip art photography, just the general lack of how one of the best games in the board game space has one of the worst degrees of components and art out there. And while Terraforming Mars Big Box does not fix the art, the sheer number of cards and a level of artwork that would be needed to adjust that is, well, it's an extreme adventure or whatnot. Nonetheless, what it does do is it does give you deluxified components. Any number of deluxified components, not just the ocean, the land, the cities, not just all that, but anything from markers to the board, from various expansions that have deluxified components, from your colonies to I don't know which member, the Prelude, Turmoil. They have a whole bunch of extra components for various expansions, as well as a insert that hopefully will help with storage and aspects and getting everything out of the box or whatnot. At the end of the day, like Kemet before it, I'm completely prepared to let this one go if it does not add to the experience. If it in any way makes it harder to get this game to the table, then this whole thing will go away, because I value I value the experience of Terraforming Mars. It gives me so much already that I'm not prepared to compromise on that. I'm not prepared to say, hey, look, these pieces are prettier, but I'm not playing the game quite as much. And honestly, it's a little weird to say this, I'm even prepared to get a second copy of the game if I need to, because this is one of my favorite games of all time. Moving on from there, we have what is my sixth number 10 so far, and this is still number 10, rest assured, because this is 7th Citadel. It's hard to be as excited for the re-release of something than it is to be excited for the original. And granted, 7th Citadel is definitely not 7th Continent, to the point that I recently got rid of my 7th Continent because of 7th Citadel, because ever since I played 7th Citadel, I have a review of it, I have a should you back it. Ever since I played the prototype of the game, I have not been able to pull out my 7th Continent and enjoy it quite as much. The narrative aspect of 7th Citadel, the actual carrying of the story. 7th Citadel did a lot of things differently from 7th Continent. It gives you the core 7th Continent gameplay of laying out cards on an explorative adventure with not clearly defined win or losses of those scenarios. But 7th Citadel added a lot to the game. It gave a different story that to me I wasn't as pulled in by the world building going on. It's a little bit too odd in terms of what it does differently with these sandworms and plants that you're planting to fight the sandworms. The story does not pull me in on the higher background level, but additionally it put you more in the place in the first person view of a character that really was encountering things as they went along. You weren't simply on an island trying to explore and get some vague sense of what's going on this island. There was a genuine story that you were thrown into the story. You're thrown into a building that's crashing down around you as you run down hallways and talk with characters and have narrative aspects back and forth as you flip through a journal book and have different choices and consequences. Perhaps I'm dealing with a prisoner, and depending on what I say, some other choices are cut off forever. Some things are just gone. There is choice, there is consequence, there is storytelling, there is that first-person viewpoint of this game. Additionally, throw in more of a legacy, ongoing aspect as you build up your camp and develop your decks and have, as opposed to the sheer item deck that 7th Continent gave you off the bat, 7th Citadel gives you a more limited deck that you will slowly but surely explore. So it has more of a campaign aspect, not legacy. Nothing's destructible to the best of my knowledge, or at least there's one thing that you can write on, but you can print out other things for that. But overall, it gives a campaign and a more immersive world. And while the campaign itself, I didn't have the opportunity to explore that in depth because of the prototype just didn't give me that, the actual story is what pulled me in. The degree of immersion that 7th Citadel gave me compared to 7th Continent was so off the charts that I got rid of 7th Continent. I sat there and said, 7th Continent has been great. I have 15, 20 hours of gameplay under my belt on that game, which is a decent amount compared to many of the games that I have and play. But at the end of the day, I would rather play 7th Citadel. I would rather pull that out and put it on my table, which is why this is a game that is in my number 10 slot for the X number time. And again, late pledge available over here. Moving on from there to what I believe is the last number 10 on my list. The last number 10 is going to be Arena of the Contest Tanares Adventures, and again, that is because this is one that I have the base game of Arena of the Contest on my shelf, and I can play this at any point, and so it limits some degree of my excitement for the game. And this video is well timed because they just announced that they are reopening the Pledge Manager again. So the Pledge Manager will be open for the next few months if you want to jump in on this. I have one video on Tanares Adventures, like should you play it or something like that, as well as should you back it or why I back Tanares Adventures. So I have some videos on the game. Overall, this is a PvP and PvE. No, sorry, PvP or PvE. It's one or the other, in which you are which you're choosing these heroes that are going to be vastly different in the abilities and skill sets and general ways they come to the table, because each hero has a class and each class has its own ability, and then within that each hero has their own 4 unique abilities, and so they bring a lot of differences to the table. And then you have to go through these adventures on the board where you have to accomplish different objectives or fight each other down and just try to ping each other to death. So that's going to be PvP versus PvE. I've only played the PvE of this game. I have no real interest in the PvP. I'm willing to explore it, that's for sure, but I just haven't felt the need to, because when I pull this out, that PvE experience, that cooperative moving through the story and trying to progress and actually taking out monsters is so immensely rewarding, and it's just fun, and it's challenging. It's not as simple. It has that perfect level of balance where you feel, to me, a cooperative game has to fall into one of two categories. Well, not one of two categories. It has to work out such that when you win, you feel like you could have lost, or that you almost lost. And when you lose, you feel like you could have won, or that you almost won. And Arena the Contest very much has had that in my experience. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton of content, so if any of the missions or scenarios don't have that, I'm not commenting on that. But I will say what I have encountered in this game, the missions I have played through, have very much had that perfect level of balance where it feels like the game is balanced well, where everything you do, it's challenging, and yet not too challenging. It gives you that feeling. And Tanares Arena the Contest in general is one that I'm very excited about. Tanares Adventures doubled down on the amount of cooperative story-based content the game gave you, as well as these epic dragon collections, just these painted dragons that you can get. You can get them unpainted as well, but you have all these painted bosses and dragons. I mean, look at this eyeball thing. Look at this. I mean, putting that on the table to be fought is something intimidating, and the giant purple colors they gave it, or whatever it is, if you get the painted version, I mean, oh my gosh, these miniatures, it's just the sheer content this game gives you, the sheer amount of stretch goals, of miniatures, of everything else, and they upped, if you're not familiar, the original game had lower quality miniatures than people would have liked, and they upped their standard by going to a new factory, which they've been showing us production, everything. It is one that I'm excited about. And now, 20 minutes into the video, we get to move to my number 9. Number 9 is going to be Stormsunder Heirs of Ruin. Now, this is one I genuinely debated putting 4 Humours here and dropping Stormsunder off the list. And because Stormsunder falls into this weird category of epic sprawling campaign games, that I will get this game, I will get it to the table as soon as I can to see if I like it, and then I'll play it, and I'll probably love it. I'll say, this is amazing, this is incredible, and then I'll box it up, and I don't know when it will see play next after that, because I have so many of these games in the background. Now, some of them I have actually been able to start slowly knocking out, which is nice, but the sheer quantity of epic sprawling campaign games, I have Gloomhaven, I have Jaws of the Lion, I have Madara coming, I have Stormsunder coming, I have many other games, I have Trudvang Legends coming, I have some Citadel coming. There's so many games that I am just a little bit more skeptical as to when and how it will see the level of play I want, and that is why Stormsunder was my number 9 and potentially pushed off my list entirely. That being said, I am excited about it. I am intrigued by the world building here. I am intrigued by the story, the consequences, the choices. I am intrigued by the vast quantity of amazing looking miniatures. I mean, I'm still waiting for Wild Descent to deliver, so there is that. But I believe Wild Descent should be delivering soon, and then from there we'll see how Stormsunder plays out. I am excited by the promise of the world that Stormsunder brings. And yes, by the way, I have a why I backed it on Stormsunder, as well as I don't have a review because it's not out, and this was one that they have late pledge currently available, so you can late pledge for this game. There is a lot of content. You can get this for as cheaply is a relative term, as $150 for the core experience, which will give you a ton of content. You are getting an absolute ton of miniatures, of cards, of gameplay, of everything in that $150. Or you can go up to like $600 to get everything. I mean, there's all these different tiers in between, so there's various different degrees to which you can engage in all the stuff that this game offers you. But wow, there is a lot of stuff here. Wow, there's a lot of content. I hope it's good. I don't know if it will be. They have a companion app. They have a 300-hour campaign. Who needs a 300-hour campaign? I don't know, but I don't. Again, for me, this is my own pet peeve. For other people, for someone who's looking for a singular experience, then Stormsunder might be a singular experience that involves you for years. For someone like myself who likes playing all the games, campaign games are both a blessing and a curse. They are that thing that I want to dive into, the thing that tempts me with the promise of the worlds that I can explore and engage in and the rewarding experiences I can have, and that I just don't have enough time to get to the table. And that's why Stormsunder is my number 9. Moving to there, we have number 8, Townsfolk Tussle. Townsfolk Tussle is one of the most, I would say, from the games I've played recently, it is one of the most charming experiences I have had, in addition to 4 Humours in that sense. Townsfolk Tussle, to me, the only reason it is not ranked higher is because I don't know when and how often this game will get to the table in contrast with other games, and that's because I don't know how much this is a fit for various people in my game group. I can tell you that my wife does not like the artwork of this game, which means I'm not playing it with her. She just genuinely did not want to play it. I have a review and a should you back it on this game as well. I do not know if they still have a late pledge. I know the pledge manager hasn't closed yet, so it may still be available if you check that out, follow links or whatnot, but I don't know if it's available to late pledge for sure. As far as the game itself, like I said already, my wife is not going to play this with me, and for my game group, it falls into a weird space that I don't know if or when it will see play. I still need to try it with certain people. A lot of people in my game group have not tried it. This is the nature of COVID. Everything in life has changed. I don't know who actually plays it, but this is one that I'm getting, not knowing if or when it will see play, just for the mere hope that it will. The game itself is a boss battler, and it's a boss battler that is going to be on the lighter side to a certain degree in comparison with a game like Kingdom Death Monster, at least. But past that lighter degree, the game is the artwork and the world building is amazing. The story it builds and the style of the game, of that cartoony kind of take that even amongst yourselves, it has, to a certain extent, it's semi co-op. It's not really, it's almost full co-op, but with just a tad bit of getting in each other's ways, of strapping dynamite to some other player's foot so you can get close to the boss and then blow both of them up at the same time. The game gives you the scenario elements to interact with that are all, again, whimsical in what they do in different ways. Things like walking through piles of glass, broken glass, to try to find more items as you go through 4 different scenarios to fight 4 different bosses. The actual gameplay, in my opinion, thrives when you have more than 2 characters on the board and at least 2 people playing it. 2 characters on the board I didn't find gave it enough depth, and playing it solo I did not personally enjoy, because so much of the game is about the character and the fun that having those moments where you run a car over the boss is just, it adds so much to the gameplay when you're playing with someone else, as opposed to, it doesn't add quite as much when you're playing by yourself. And then each boss brings its own character to the table. I loved having the boss, Moneybanks or whatever her name was, just throwing coins at players, and there was actual money that you can then use in their next village phase or whatnot, assuming you are able to keep it until then. So each character, each boss brings its own flavor to the table, and the way it interacts with the world, that, again, incredibly well done. This is one of the, I want to say it's one of the times I've been most impressed by a new creator, because this was from a new creator. This was their first game on Kickstarter, their first game at all, and the level of quality they brought to the table from the production, from the Kickstarter, from the gameplay, the prototypes, everything they did was amazingly impressive. I'm looking forward to what Panic World does next, because, I mean, I can't imagine it'll be anything but impressive, although it might just be Townsfolk Tussle, the expansion, which I'm fine with that as well. Moving on to my number 8 is going to be ISS Vanguard. Now, ISS Vanguard falls into an interesting base for me. In theory, it could be higher on my list for me, but at the same time, ISS Vanguard is one that I'm so excited for. And this, by the way, is an active campaign. So if you're watching this, depending on when you're watching this video, this is currently an active project that you can go in there and, well, back it right now. Goal reached. It funded in 3 minutes and 15 seconds because it's Awakened Realms and this game's been hyped for like 3 years, so that's not really a surprise in that sense. And so ISS is one that I have played it. I have multiple videos on this one. I have a Should You Back It, I have a review, I have a How to Play, I have multiple gameplay videos. Myself and Quacklope both have gameplay videos of this. Additionally, there's plenty of other content creators you should be watching, from Ant Lab Games to Dice Tower. There's so many videos on this game. There's so much stuff about this game. ISS Vanguard is one that I am incredibly excited for the narrative aspect it gives me. This is actually potentially tied with 7 Citadel in the experience they're going to give me. I say potentially because ISS Vanguard gave me 8 hours with the prototype and a lot more exploration, versus 7 Citadel gave me about an hour and a half, 2 hours with the prototype, which means that I didn't get to see the world of 7 Citadel quite as much. I believe it has the potential to be in the same realm of giving me a story that I care about, consequences to my actions, gameplay that is light and yet meaningful enough that I still find it rewarding, as well as an aspect of campaign to the expanding of your ship and or settlement in 7 Citadel. And so both of them, I believe, might be in the same space, but like I said, one of them I know is what I know more about what one of them is giving me compared to the other. And so ISS Vanguard is one that I'm incredibly excited for. And I want to say, like, I'm also incredibly excited for the most recent update that's just announced, as of when I'm filming this at least, which is going to be, they announced a character. Let me actually just go to it, because I think it's cool, which is, let's see over here, the updates. I'm still not as familiar with GameFound as I am with Kickstarter. Sometimes I look for things. And so we have over here, we have the Day 5 character expansion, stretch goals, and personal follows add-on. There's going to be more characters. So at this point, we have 90 characters in your game. And the reason you have so many characters is because expect some of them to die. This game does give you that consequence to your actions, that consequence to what has happened as the game progresses. Perhaps you made a choice and you risked a lander moving into the fog when you absolutely shouldn't have, Jesse. You shouldn't have done it. You should have called the lander back. And now, I don't know, what's her name? And now Gamorlan Muba is dead. Gamorlan Muba is dead because of you, Jesse. Okay, you have to have more self-control in your choices. And sometimes these things will happen in this game, and that character death is a core gameplay aspect. So they give you 90 characters. And then they announce that they're giving you backstories to all of those characters, a little bit more reason to care, a little bit more of an identity behind them. And additionally to that, they announced the expansion for the character personnel files expansion, which gives you a 4th level to each of your characters, more opportunity to level up as you accomplish certain goals, and then new artwork for those cards. Perhaps Isabel over here moves to Isabel over here with a different choice, a different ability, an improved state, and more whatever is on the back of their card. So it gives you more character depth to the game, which, as much as this game is about controlling a section as opposed to any individual characters, I like it when a game makes you care. I like it when a game gives you a reason to be more emotionally invested in people, especially if those people are died. If we've learned nothing from Game of Thrones, it's the idea that death can be incredibly meaningful if you make people care enough. Moving on from there, for my number 7 is going to be Merchants of the Dark Road. Merchants of the Dark Road is going to be one that, again, I'm incredibly excited about. This is one that I have not had the opportunity to play. This is going to be by Elf Creek Games, and it's going to be one of the games that comes to mind when I think of the prettiest games I have ever seen. Merchants of the Dark Road is going to be a singular Euro experience, which also means the ability to get this one to the table is heightened. It does not mean that I will keep this in my collection. It's very possibly might be a game that just doesn't do it for me. And yet I'm excited because the gameplay looks like it's my style. It has rondels going on. It has a whole bunch of upgrading and tableau building and building out abilities and unique stuff like that I really like in games. It has production quality that is absolutely insane. It has a 1 to 2 hour game, which means if this is good, if this does check off my boxes, then I will be incredibly excited about being able to get this to the table on a regular basis compared to something like Stormsunder, which I don't know when I'll ever be able to fully explore that game. These one-shot adventures are more often what I should be playing as opposed to what I often want to get my hands on as well. And so Merchants of the Dark Road is one that I am incredibly excited about. I went all in on the deluxeified everything. This is one that I did a Should You Back It. I did not do a review. It is available for pre-order. I do not know if there are price differences in Pledge Manager or how any of that works, but Elf Creek Games has a history of knocking it out of the road with their production value, and they have delivered consistently good games. I mean, Honey Buzz is getting a lot of, well, buzz. That was not intentional. It really wasn't. Atlantis Rising is a well-loved game, well-reviewed by many, and I imagine Merchants of the Dark Road is going to be no exception. I know people who have played it who have an incredibly high opinion of this game. I am excited for this game. And those coins, let me just focus on those coins before I move on to the next one. Those coins, if we find them, where are they? We have, here we go, here's Jeremy Howard. I've played this prototype several times during the campaign. I'm still impressed by the design. It may be Brian Sure's best. So that's a thing right there. I'm okay with that thing. I still cannot find the coins because they're probably after the stretch goals. They're probably in the optional buys if I can find them. Nope, not these. These are the plain cardboard coins, which plain is a relative term. They still look incredible. But if we can find those metal coins soon, shortly. Here we go, the Lumi coins. These are going to be dual colored metal coins, which is something that I haven't seen before, and I'm excited for it. Now, granted, they are expensive. That's the nature of the world. You know, if something that looks this cool is going to be expensive. Nonetheless, I definitely got these coins. I want that experience. I want to see what else they add. I am intrigued, and, well, sign me up for all the stuff. Moving on to there, we have a number 6, I think. 5. I think 5. I may have skipped one at some point. Let me see. 9, 8, 7. ISS was 7. Merchants of the Dark was a 6. Wonderland's War is 5. Wonderland's War by Druid City Games or by Skybound Games. It's a little bit of a combination of what they are there. This is one that I am simultaneously incredibly excited for, and also completely prepared to be let down by. And what I mean by that is this is a game that combines Quacks of Quedlinburg with Blood Rage. It combines area control with the bag building of Quacks of Quedlinburg, and I don't know if that will be a solid experience or not. That could be incredibly unique, incredibly interesting, a solid addition to my realm of games of area control that I love, and for sure, absolutely for sure, it will stand out. If this game is good, it will have the benefit of being already different than other games in my area control genre. At the same time, it just may not be good. It may be that combining that degree of luck of Quacks and Quedlinburg, that push your luck, hoping to get the right bag from the right chip from your bag, that may just not work in a game that is as tight and tense as an area control game. So this is a game that Wonderland's War is simultaneously one that I am so excited for and so prepared to be let down by. This is a game where you're going to have unique factions, all with their own unique abilities, unique things that they bring to the table, and I love that. I love asymmetric factions. I love how they can add to the experience that I want to play this faction or that faction. It's going to have a ton of cards and chips and things that you upgrade as you sit there and go through this T building phase or what have you, as you upgrade your bag and add to what you can do and add to how you can engage and fight in the different areas of the game. This is a game that I am so tremendously excited for the sheer production quality of Wonderland, the sheer production quality of Skybound Games and what they bring to the table, both with miniatures, with artwork, with everything. I mean, they knock it out of the park every single time on their production quality. Their games for me have been a little bit not as I've liked all of their games. I haven't loved their games yet, but I'm hoping that this, in both by checking off the boxes of the genre that I like, by giving me an interesting experience with combining of those mechanics into a singular game, combine that with everything else that is amazing about Skybound games, and I am intrigued for Wonderland's War. I am excited for this one. This is possibly the earliest in my 2020 Kickstarters. I think this was way back in January. I don't remember exactly when it was. Nonetheless, color me excited, color me intrigued. It's a world, and also the unique theme. That's another one. The unique theme. The game has an incredibly unique theme. I am a sucker for a unique theme if implemented well. And that basically is Wonderland's War. Moving on today, we have my number 4, which is going to be Ankh, Gods of Egypt. And this is the first CMON game, and possibly, no, not the last. This is not the last CMON game. In fact, if you want to sit there and think through which one is going to be higher than this one, go for it. But in the meantime, Ankh, Gods of War is going to complete the Blood Rage and Rising Sun trilogy, and the reason it's not my highest in this list is because, honestly, I love Blood Rage, one of my favorite games of all time. But Rising Sun, to me, is a game that I would just rather play Blood Rage every single time. And so Ankh has this legacy to live up to, this aspect of the miniatures look amazing. I love the Egyptian theme. I love the promise of the gameplay. I love that they are potentially bringing new things to the table with that aspect of the gods combining and then eliminating. It seems like a game that might be doing enough differently in the area control genre by designers and artists and a company that I love, that I might just love this game. Or it might be like Rising Sun, a game overshadowed by its big brother, a game that I am happy to play and will never turn down, but also not one that I feel the need to table. Also, by the way, it also could just be bad as well. That is a possibility. I assume not, honestly, given the lineage and the designers at play here, but nonetheless, we'll see where it actually ends up. But Ankh I am definitely excited for. The abilities, the gods, the factions, the monsters, all the stuff that I love about CMON in an area control genre that I genuinely love. It is one that I am certainly excited for. I do not believe you can late pledge this one. I believe we're way too late for that at this point. But this is one that I'm excited. I'm excited for all the expansions, what they bring to the table, the miniatures, the Egyptian theme, the sheer amounts of crocodiles that I will have on my table set up and fighting each other and doing what they need to do. Everything about this game appeals to me. Ankh is one that I am incredibly excited for, incredibly intrigued, and oh my gosh, look at this crocodile. Petsuchos, or however you pronounce that, that is some sort of monster crocodile that I want on my table, facing off against whatever. Can somebody should be making a list of like Blood Rage monster promo cards using all the various creatures from other games. I want Petsuchos in my Blood Rage game. I want to see that guy on the table being recruited into like Asgard and doing something horrific. Ideally something horrific. That seems to be the best way to go. And that's going to be Ankh. Moving on from there, we have number 3, D.E.I. Divide at Impera, and this is one that definitely surprised me. At the end of the day, it kind of baffles my mind that D.E.I., a game I initially passed on, is now up there as, my number 3 game, my third highest, most anticipated game from 2020 Kickstarters. And that's going to be because at the end of the day, no matter how excited I am about Ankh, D.E.I. is one that I've played. And playing a game is going to push you higher up on the list because I know that I liked D.E.I. I don't know if I'll like it after 5 more plays. I can't speak for that. But I have loved this game. From the designer Barrage, from D.E.I., from Ludus Magnus Studios, this is one that I totally passed on. I was always intrigued by. To be clear, I was always intrigued by. But I wasn't certain about how the game would play out. The smaller miniatures are one thing. The Ludus Magnus has their own issues to some degree in the past, of different things, that different drama, whatnot. And the game looked intriguing, but I wasn't fully captured because the combat seemed to be on the low end, a lot more area control, not enough combat. But at the end of the day, I have played this game on TTS and I have loved the experience. The deck building is robust. The hand management and playing out your cards every single round, trying to optimize around it is fun. The 4 rounds of the game feels like not enough time to get everything done, and yet, honestly, it was the perfect length for the game. It was enough that you really did get to do a lot. You got to upgrade every single card, or in my case, I got to upgrade every single card that I had. But that's basically where the game capped out. Once I had upgraded all my cards, I was then locked into the gameplay and locked into the utilization of those cards for the various abilities and whatnot. This is a game that is about area control and far more than it is about combat. There will occasionally be combat, occasionally be fighting, but it's far more about knowing when and how to conquer various areas on the board. As well as that 3D board, the board does have a 3D element that is going to make it stand out on your table and in your collection. It's a gimmick, to be sure, but it's a gimmick that works. And then you have these drones that navigate the board, less impacted, less in the way of all those elements. They can move from highs to lows across different sections without having to worry about the tactical limitations that your ground troops have. And it's so much fun to build out your engine around this game, to to accomplish different objectives, to build out your deck, to take your actions, your limited actions every single round. D.E.I. was an immensely rewarding game. It is still available for late pledge as of now, but that could end any day because they officially said that they were closing the late pledge and they haven't yet, so we'll see how that plays out. But it is one that I was ready to pass on. I did pass on, and last minute I backed this game because I played it and I liked it. And moving on from there, we're going to have a shared spot because this, give me a second to get this. So I'm pulling up over here. We're going to have a shared spot for my number 2. Shared because I forgot about Dead Reckoning. We're going to have shared the spot with Massive Darkness and Dead Reckoning for my number 2. Let me just drag this over here. And that's going to be, let's do Massive Darkness first. And the reason for that is because Dead Reckoning, I didn't actually back it. And so it wasn't on my list of games as I was going through them. And I completely forgot about it. But then because of Kemet, I remembered the drama around Dead Reckoning. But I am still excited about Dead Reckoning, and I still will 100% be getting my hands on it, which is why I'm including it in this list. Massive Darkness 2, though. This is one that should technically fall into the category of games that are in my number 10 spot because I have Massive Darkness, and I don't need Massive Darkness 2, and yet Massive Darkness 2 does enough differently and has enough things happening and gives you little miniature games around all the characters that I treat it as a separate game. This is not Guards of Atlantis where they are adding a few new characters, tweaking a few things, and giving you a better game, better version of the same game. Massive Darkness 2 rehauls what Massive Darkness did. It takes all the good from the game and completely rehauls the bad, from a campaign that is ideally more balanced and actually prepared to go through, from characters that actually feel like they're unique and different because they all have their little mini games that you're playing, whether it's push your luck, rondel, deck building. Each one brings to the table a different style of gameplay that makes it stand out from the other classes, giving you mini games. I love mini games. One of my favorite parts about Root was how each faction felt totally different, and this is doing that to a smaller degree, but nonetheless to a degree that seems rewarding. Combine that with miniatures that I loved, and I find it so not entertaining, I find it so interesting that many people had such a hard time with the miniatures from Massive Darkness, finding them too cartoony, too all over the place. For myself, I loved them. I loved almost all of them. The only one that I had a problem with was the dragon, which ironically a lot of people did like. The dragon, primarily because it was also reused from a different game, so I'm not a huge fan of the dragon in this case, being utilized from an entirely different game, putting it here, it felt out of place and clearly was out of place. That being said, I also I did not have a problem with the giant pink teddy bear and punnycorns, so there's only so much flack I can really give them when my tastes are as inconsistent as all that. But combine amazing miniatures, tons of expansions, tons of content around these mini games that you can play around a system that I know I like because I do like Massive Darkness. I own Massive Darkness. I like this game with all its flaws. I can't even imagine how much I'll like it when I'm playing it without the flaws or with a different system, with things streamlined, not as samey, because one of the problems with Massive Darkness, the original, was that combat often felt too samey, too much of just modifications. Oh, you roll 2 extra dice, you roll 1 extra dice, you take away this, you do that. It didn't feel as unique and empowering, and Massive Darkness seems to fix all of those problems. I am incredibly excited for Massive Darkness. This is one of my most anticipated games. I went all in on everything, of course, because for the games that I love, there is no limit to what I'm willing to do. I mean, there is a limit, but it's not the $500 range, unfortunately. I did not get all the optional game-genic stuff because those just didn't seem to be necessary, and storage seemed like it would be more of a problem. I was not interested in that. But past that, all gameplay and gameplay deluxifications, those I got for this game. Massive Darkness is one that I'm incredibly excited about. I do not believe you can late pledge it. I think it's too late. Command in general generally has shorter windows for your late pledge availability. You can always try. You can message them. I have had success with that in the past, but even then, that's still a rarity. And from there, we're going to go to Dead Reckoning, sharing the number 2 spot because I forgot about it. Dead Reckoning is a game that I have played, which, like D.E.I. before, it puts it at a higher category. I love the game in Dead Reckoning, and I love the accessibility of it. This is a game you can pull out and play in 90 minutes to 2 hours, getting a game knocked out, and it gives you rewarding deck building and exploration and different choices as you go through that. Different ways you can play the game. It's going to have that Merchants or Marauders feel of being able to win both as a merchant and to be able to win as a pirate, to have the combat element. I played this only at 2 players, which I have to imagine is a suboptimal way to play the game, and yet that was thoroughly enjoyable. I'm looking forward to playing Dead Reckoning again. I'm looking forward to getting it to the table. I did not back the Kickstarter because of call it a protest, if you will, against the way the Kickstarter was run and the expectations that were set and the messaging that was there. I understand all the things behind it. I did have an interview with Luke with AEG about the game, about the Kickstarter and everything else there. At the end of the day, I plan on picking this up one way or the other. I will get it on the secondhand market. I will figure it out. I just didn't back the Kickstarter as part of a statement there. So I'm excited about the game. I'm excited for AEG, their first $1 million Kickstarter. This was not million. Wait, no, it was shy of $1 million? I thought it hit $1 million. I guess not. Their highest funded Kickstarter, even if it didn't hit $1 million, and one that is a solid experience. This is going to be designed by John D. Clear, who has the card crafting system in general, from Edge of Darkness, from the other system that I can't remember. Starts with an M. Something. That's the game. I can't remember. He has another card crafting system. He has a few card crafting games, but nonetheless, this is one that I am very excited about, very intrigued by. It's one that I forgot on my list, but nonetheless, one that I am looking forward to adding to my collection. Which brings us to number one. And if you can guess what my number one is, well, if you can't guess, I'd be honestly a little surprised. But my number one game is going to be Endless Winter, my number one Kickstarter. This is one that is my number one for a variety of reasons. I have played the game multiple times. I have enjoyed it every single time. I have a should you back it. I have a review on it. You can late pledge this game. It's going to be art that I loved. It's going to be gameplay that was accessible and variable. This, more than perhaps almost anything else on this list, will see play at my table. There is a solo version to play. If my game group decides they don't like it, I will play the solo version of this game. I like the puzzle being constructed in this game. I plan on playing it not solo because I have played it not solo and my game group does like it, so I'm not worried about that. But it's a game that plays well. Like I said, I have not played solo. I have played it at 2, 3, and 4 players, and it has been enjoyable every single time. I love the deck building of the game. It gives you that tense, limited actions that a game like Mage Knight does, but in a far more accessible game. That's the only thing that's comparable to Mage Knight, to be clear. Nothing else about the game is remotely comparable to Mage Knight, but it gives you different puzzles you're solving, from the animal collection, from the collecting different sets of animals, utilizing them in-game for food, from building out your camps on these sideboards, from developing your deck and the culture cards they're in, the points they will score endgame, the engine they will build for you mid-game, managing your monoliths on the side tier over here, again, both for bonuses in-game, points endgame. They have a whole bunch of expansions that were in this Kickstarter, from cave painting, which looks amazingly fun, from rivers and rafts or whatever it was. There's so much about this game that I like, and the biggest thing for me at the end of the day is, while it's possible I will enjoy other experiences more, accessibility is a huge point in my favor when I'm excited about a game that I know that will hit the table on a regular basis. Coming in at a 90-minute playtime in person, this is a game that will hit the table with a regularity that games like Massive Darkness, that games like Stormsunder, that games like Ankh will not hit as frequently, even though they will hit the table, rest assured on that, but they will not hit the table as frequently as Endless Winter, which is why at the end of the day, Endless Winter is going to be my number one Kickstarter of 2020, granted with, like I said, 7 days left to 2020, and so we'll see how that actually plays out, but I'm not expecting anything else. This has been a longer video than anticipated, but that's probably because I tried to shove 7 games in my number 10 slot. I'd apologize, but I don't feel bad in the slightest. I like games, I like talking about games, and if I can cheat and talk about more games, I will do so. I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Please let me know in the comments down below which is your favorite Kickstarter from 2020. What game, whatever combination of factors that lead into it, what game that you backed in 2020, or in my case with Dead Reckoning didn't back in 2020, are you most excited about? Which one are you looking forward to the day it shows up on your door so that you can play it, see if it's for you, and then either have all your dreams fulfilled or be let down in horrible disappointment? Both do happen on a regular basis for me. I recently reviewed Kingdom Rush, and that was a game that I loved. I was so excited for it, and I loved it, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with the experience it delivered. And I also got Reichbusters, which is another game that I was excited about, and was let down. Not a bad game, but not the experience and cleanliness that I was hoping for. Kickstarter is a fascinating, wonderful journey, full of disappointment, full of highs, full of lows, and at the end of the day, it's one that I'm still exploring, still discovering, and I hope you stick along for the ride to see them all with me. Until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe down below. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. Don't forget to let me know in the comments down below which is your favorite Kickstarter, and as always, have a good one.